The big start of it, right? There was, as far as them coming to the attention, they didn't seem to play a major role in the coup of 2004. And there were, people who knew that this is a problem lurking in the background here. But during the Maidan protests, it was like, hey, who are these guys, man, with all this crazy Nazi symbology and who are clearly, dangerous. They're not peaceful protesters. They're not moderate rebels. I mean, these guys are trouble. You could tell just by looking at them, you know. And then so what happened was, very briefly, they threatened to kick the Russians out of their naval base in Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula. So Putin seized it. He had his Marines and sailors go outside and seize the peninsula in what's called a coup de main. It wasn't even a war. They just took the thing over, essentially, virtually without a fight at all. Very, very few people were killed. I think the highest number I ever saw was 6 that were killed in the thing, and maybe not even that much. But then a war broke out in the east of the country, because in the east of the country, they refused to accept the authority of the new coup d'etat junta. They said, you guys can seize a bunch of government buildings and take over the country. Well, we can certainly seize government buildings and just refuse to respect your authority. And so that was what they did. And then immediately the new coup regime declared a war on terrorism and invaded the east of the country. And it's just an absolute catastrophe. I mean, they killed like 10,000 people in the space of about a year and a half or two. And then very much so, during this whole time, the front line kind of vanguard of the Ukrainian armed forces were these Nazis, these committed white supremacists. And it's, right sector, Azov, Adar, and a group called C14, which that's the famous 14 words of the white supremacist slogan and all that. That's what that means. And it is, it's funny, they're National Socialists, but there is like a National Socialist International, you know what I mean? Just like the commies, where these guys are kind of, are blood brothers from across Europe and even the United States. You've had Nazis go there to fight with them against the Russians. Again, this war we're talking about now has been going on for 7 years, 8 years, since 2014. So you've had even, at Charlottesville, one of the Nazis who was arrested for that, not for running over the lady, but who was involved in that and charged with felonies, had been to Ukraine, where he fought on the side of the Nazis against the Russians in the Donbass. There were also stories in The Intercept, of all places, which never really covered Ukraine properly because Omidyar was involved in it, their owner. And they never really covered Syria properly either. Only Murtaza, Al-Qaeda, Hussein, who, spinning for the bad guys, ever covered it at The Intercept. I don't know why exactly. But anyway, for some reason, they had, I think, 3 or 4 really great articles about Syrian jihadists from Obama's dirty war in Syria going off to Ukraine to join up with the Nazis to fight against the Russians. Because, of course, you have the bin Ladenites had their bloody war in Chechnya against the Russians in 94 and again in 98, 99, 2000, the latter time of which Bill Clinton, the CIA, and the Saudis were backing the Chechen terrorists against the Russians, which, by the way, made it into Putin's declaration of war back at the end of February, was he said, yeah, and you backed the terrorists against us in Chechnya, and you think we forgot about that? And by the way, who is he? He's the guy that Yeltsin hired to win that war and then named president right out and resigned on New Year's and handed the whole thing over to him. That's where Putin comes from, is blowback from Bill Clinton's policy of backing the terrorists there. So you have these Chechen terrorists who went to Syria to fight in the dirty war, and then now they got an opportunity to kill Russians again. So they go to Ukraine to line up with the Nazis. And so you have tens of thousands of these guys. And now this is another thing. Bret Baier, the most important hard news reporter at Fox News, he did an interview with Vladimir Zelensky. And he asked him about the Azov Battalion. And I heard they're Nazis. And I swear to God, Buck, they cut this out of the YouTube and the Fox archive. You got to find it on Rumble. Some guy posted it from his DVR. The official version, they cut this out of the interview, which, man, it's the most Orwellian thing. And you can't do that. How can you do that?